This is the story of the real dogs of war who got caught. Sir Mark Thatcher has pleaded guilty to his role in the attempted coup to overthrow the government of Equatorial Guinea. This film reveals the inside story of the coup, how it was planned and financed, and who blew the whistle. Sir Mark was dealing with a group of British and South African businessmen who thought they could make a fortune taking over Africa's equivalent of Kuwait. Tonight, we reveal how the UK, US and other governments knew well in advance.
I know for a fact that the British authorities did know beforehand, and in January, and so did the US administration.
We reveal that one of the men reported to be working closely with the team claimed to have met one of Bush's top advisors.
He told me he'd met Condoleezza Rice and that this was prior to the coup. I was very surprised at this. I wondered why it was he should be meeting the National Security Advisor.
And we show how the coup plotters were finally lured into a trap made by the South African Intelligence Agency.
South Africa got to know. Zimbabwean South Africans and the Equatorial Guineans were able to work out that there is a coup being planned.
With an exclusive interview with Nick Du Toit, the man alleged to have been at the heart of the military plan just days before he was sentenced to 34 years. And with evidence showing that Sir Mark Thatcher was in regular communication with the men involved, this is an astonishing story of greed and betrayal. Equatorial Guinea in West Africa. It's hot and humid and humming with mosquitoes. Why would anyone want to have a coup here? Because this place has oil, loads of it. To uncover the incredible story of this very British coup, we've travelled from Equatorial Guinea to South Africa to Washington and even Chelsea. We've met intelligence officers, top-ranking US senators, diplomats, and even corrupt Equatorial Guinea officials trying to extort cash from us. It can take years to uncover the full details of a coup, but we've gathered massive documentation, witness statements, intelligence reports, secret plans, even phone records. We've entered a world of smoke and mirrors, of spies, double agents, arms dealers, assassins and tycoons. This is a dirty world. Taking over a country is no easy feat. You've got to do it right. First of all, you've got to pick the right country. It's got to have loads of oil, a weak military, and a corrupt dictator. Voila! The former Spanish colony of Equatorial Guinea is prime pickings. 15 years ago, it was one of the poorest countries in Africa, with an appalling record of human rights abuses. But when American companies discovered oil here, Equatorial Guinea hit the jackpot. Now this tin pot republic is one of the world's fastest growing economies. Get control here and you're onto a winner. The country's run by President Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo, Obiang for short. Of the world's top 10 dictators, Obiang's been listed as number 6. He too came to power by a coup. He's alleged to eat the testicles of his enemies and has been damned for the way he stages his elections. But for some reason, none of this was mentioned by the government official I met. Is the president here that you've got at the moment, President Obiang, is he popular with the people?
Well, I will tell you this, and this is very official. During the last presidential election in this country, the PDG, which is the People Democratic Party of Equatorial Guinea, the head of state had 97.5% of the electoral vote. It was a very popular vote.
If it got to 99% or 100%, would people get a bit suspicious?
It's the wish of the people.
But 100% is a pretty high figure.
Sometimes people have 110% in elections because
Really?
of the wish of the people.
110%?
No, just a saying.
Obiang and his family have a stranglehold on power. They're getting fat on the oil revenue, investing in real estate, and living the good life. But with a weak military, just 500 soldiers and a few helicopters to defend the country, he's a prime target for a coup. With the oil supply from the Middle East becoming ever more fragile, control of West African oil is vital. America wants to drill 25% of its oil from this region. We tracked down Joe Sala, a former State Department intelligence officer who's been deep down and dirty in Africa since the Cold War. He keeps a low profile, but if you want to influence African policy in Washington, then Salah's your man.
They would rather Obiang not be in power. He's looked at as an oppressive, venal, corrupt man. He is material to Washington only for the accident that he sits on top of a lake of oil.
Obiang's made the most of his lake. For the last 9 years, he's been siphoning off his country's wealth. And uncomfortably for the Americans, dumping it in their backyard. This is where the oil money from Equatorial Guinea finally ended up, often delivered in suitcases full of cash. Obiang and his cronies opened up over 60 accounts with this branch of Riggs Bank in Washington, D.C. $700 million flowed through these doors. He may be rich, but the rumour on the streets of Washington is that Obiang's ill with cancer. And with all that oil, the vultures are circling. And that brings me to London. The man accused of financing the coup lives here. Right in the heart of fashionable Chelsea. He is Eli Khalil, a secretive Lebanese businessman who made his millions from oil deals in Nigeria. For the last 4 years, Khalil supported the political ambitions of this man, Severo Moto, a self-proclaimed president in exile of Equatorial Guinea. Moto had already tried to oust Obiang once before in a coup attempt in 1997. The coup failed, and since then Moto's been living in Spain. Khalil's been helping him out, but not for charity.
The assumption in Washington would be that Khalil wanted access to Equatorial Guinea's oil, and that he, Khalil, was prepared to do whatever was necessary to bring Moto to power on the assumption that, having done that, Moto would return the favor. It's callous, it's crude, but it's the way of the world.
Khalil put in $750,000 of his own money to get the plan rolling. But staging a coup isn't cheap, and he needed to muster about $3 million to carry it out. So he turned to his mates. One of them was Jeffrey Archer, fallen politician, ex-con, and novelist of questionable quality. We've obtained the details of the offshore bank account set up to bankroll the coup. 4 days prior to the coup taking place, £135,000 was transferred into the account from one J.H. Archer. While Archer's lawyers deny that he had anything to do with the coup, they don't deny that he made this payment. In fact, all the investors deny any prior knowledge of the coup. In July 2003, a blueprint for the coup was drawn up, headed Assisted Regime Change. And other documents we've obtained reveal a plan to obtain extraordinary rights and powers over the country, controlling the military, the treasury, the oil revenues, and even external relations with countries like the United States. And with uncanny foresight, they realised that the biggest threat was going to be from themselves, expecting disloyalty, individual greed, and more. From London, the action moved on to South Africa. With the money in place, Khalil needed to find the muscle men to carry out the coup. He was introduced to Simon Mann, a close friend and neighbour of Sir Mark Thatcher in Cape Town. Mann's credentials were impeccable. Sandhurst trained and ex-SAS, Mann had run mercenary outfits operating across Africa. Mann turned to his old mercenary chums. One of them was Nick Du Toit, a former member of the elite South African Defence Force's 32 Battalion. Several months before the coup, Mann gave Du Toit $1 million to move to Equatorial Guinea to set up an aviation and fishing business. Du Toit was to be the man on the inside. But to carry out the coup, they needed weapons. In February 2004, Simon Mann and Nick Du Toit travelled to Harare in Zimbabwe to do the deal. It was a shopping list that could start a small war. It included AK-47 assault rifles, light machine guns, mortars, hand grenades, and 75,000 rounds of ammunition. The deal was half payment down now and half when they picked up the weapons. So how was the plan meant to work?
To get your mercenaries to Equatorial Guinea, you're going to need a plane. Simon Mann had bought an old US-registered Boeing 727 military plane, exactly the same size as the one over there.
It was a specialised plane for unloading troops quickly, and Mann had it flown in from Kansas, USA to here, Wonderboom Airport, South Africa. They also needed a helicopter they could convert to a gunship. The financier of that, Sir Mark Thatcher. Krauser-Stahel, the pilot of one of the planes to be used in the coup, told his brother Piet about Thatcher's involvement.
He told me that he went to, obviously, one of the planning meetings, and he had no idea who this grey-haired fellow, shall I say another English nincompoop was. And he introduced himself to Mark Thatcher as, "My name is Krauser-Stahel," to which Thatcher replied, "And who am I?"
Sir Mark met Simon Mann on numerous occasions over the coup attempt, and in January 2004, Thatcher paid $275,000 into Krauser-Stahl's bank account to fund the helicopter. The game was on. The coup plotters pushed ahead, and many of the key meetings took place in some of the more exclusive parts of Johannesburg.
Here at the Santon Hotel, and here at the Butcher's Shop and Grill.
According to Krauser-Stahl, Simon Mann asked him to be ready to fly Moto and his supporters into Mali, and then on to Equatorial Guinea once the coup was successful.
That was the plan. It all sounded so simple, but with Equatorial Guinea being such a strategically important country, governments around the world were eyeing the prize. So if Simon Mann and co were to get Moto in power, they would need to have the tacit approval of the big players. And number one on the list, Washington, D.C.
This is Greg Wales, an old Africa hand who mixes with spooks and mercenaries. He's an old mate and ex-business partner of Simon Mann, and also knows Mark Thatcher. Just how much he knew is a matter of dispute, but it is clear that Wales was the link man and political fixer, building Severo Moto's image and getting him endorsed by Washington. One of the key players he approached was Joe Sala to use his contacts in the corridors of power. But it would cost.
The arrangement that we struck with Wales and the Friends of Moto, unidentified, in February was that we would be paid $40,000 to put together a 4-day program for Moto in Washington, access to the Congress, think tanks, academics, media.
Sala went to see the State Department and discovered that Moto had an unexpected choice of friends.
The desk officer indicated to me that she knew that Moto had been there the year before here in Washington, and asked me pointedly at that point, is Khalil paying for it this time? She indicated that Khalil had paid and had accompanied Moto the year before to Washington.
As part of the lobbying campaign, Wales went to see as many of the African players as he could. One of them was Theresa Whelan at the Pentagon. But according to Christine Gordon, a former UN investigator and African expert who had first met Wales some years ago, Wales's connections didn't stop there.
He told me he'd met Condoleezza Rice and that this was prior to the coup. I was very surprised at this. I wondered why it was. He should be meeting the National Security Advisor on an issue that is so very topical and where the Americans seem to have an interest. I don't know in what circumstances he met her, but he certainly met her. He described her as being very attractive.
Astonishingly, Gordon was told by Wales that he was funded to carry out a survey of Equatorial Guinea's main harbour by the CIA, a claim Wales now denies.
He first of all told me the US State Department was paying twice. Then I think the second time he said State Department, well actually it was the CIA. And then the third time he said, well, the CIA paid. This is the initial operations that he talked about.
In the summer of 2003.
Yes. And that's when I said, you mean the CIA? Yes, untraceable.
Whether it was part of Wales's campaign or not, nobody knows. But the clear implication is that Wales and the US government were certainly talking. We also know Wales was ready to help Moto if Obiang was deposed.